Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be servicing a Mercedes C-Class diesel, and we're going to be using an oil pump as opposed to jacking the car up and draining it from the bottom. And I'll serve it for a controversial story as to which one is better, but this is the way I'm going to be showing you today, and it's a much easier way. So in this particular oil pump kit, you're going to get your oil pump, your suction and discharge hose, some Jubilee clips, and of course you're going to have the manual. And this pump will run off the 12-volt battery terminals that you got in the engine bay. Okay, and so yeah, to assemble the hoses, first of all you're going to have the suction hose. So the suction hose it's got a slightly smaller diameter than the discharge hose. And you need to make sure that it is going into the right nozzle, so that's where the arrow is pointing, or sucking in from the engine into the pump. And yeah, make sure you got the Jubilee clip in there before you put the hose onto the nozzle. Same with the discharge hose here. Make sure that Jubilee clip is in first, and then just put that hose over the nozzle. And you're almost there. You just need to tighten those Jubilee clips in position. And yeah, so these are what we're going to be using for today's job for the oil service and oil filter change. So pop the hood open and remove the engine cover. So this is a diesel engine, as I said. And so this method only works with engines where we've got a dipstick. So that's where we will be putting that suction hose in. So the advantage with this method is really you're not going to have to jack the car up, and it's a very easy install. You just need to make sure the car is on a level ground, and the car really needs to have a dipstick where you're going to be able to put that hose in and you can get to the oil reservoir. So what I'm doing here is putting the oil filler cap onto a torque wrench, and yeah, essentially just crack it loose, and just uninstall that. So it might be a little bit tough when you're first cracking it loose, so don't be afraid, as long as you are doing it anti-clockwise, so it's in the right direction. And yeah, I just grabbed an electronic torque wrench just to make the life easier. It was still a little bit tight, so I just did a few turns manually, and just at the click of a button, it just saves you a bit of time if you got this tool. So yeah, here's the old oil filter, which we'll be replacing. Right, and back to the pump. So with the pump, the last thing we had to do was just tighten those Jubilee clips, and make sure it's a 6mm hex socket. Just do it by hand. You don't want to over tighten them too much. It is a plastic hose at the end of the day, and yeah, just make sure you do both sides. So my Jubilee clip was a little bit gone down the other end, so just push it, just navigate it to the nozzle, make sure it's actually over the nozzle. Okay, so now we remove the dipstick. Just clean up, just get rid of the oil with a rag, and put that suction hose into where the dipstick is, and you will feel like, as I'm showing you here, that it will reach like a dead end, and so you know you're right at the bottom. Okay, so the next step will be to have an empty bottle or bucket or some sort that you're going to be able to discharge your old oil out. So you grab now your the discharge hose from the pump, and yeah, just put the discharge hose quite nicely into the oil bottle. So I have got the oil bottle, so I'm using that, and I've got a plastic bag around it just in case anything does spill over. It'll just be in that plastic bag, which I have done, which we'll see a little bit later. And so now to connect it to give it power supply, red positive, black negative, and we connect the positive to positive first, and so there will be in the engine bay on most modern cars those terminals, so positive to positive, and then find your ground terminal, make sure it's close by, and connect them both, and here's what it'll look like, and make sure it's in that order. After that, we're ready to turn it on, and here we go, and it's sucking all the oil out of the engine, and you can see it heading right into the oil bottle, or our discharge, through the discharge hose. So leave that running. In the meantime, we can get on with taking the old oil filter out and putting the new one in whilst it's doing that. Okay, so here I am, just pulling that one out whilst the oil pump is doing its thing, and removing all the old oil out. Take that out, took out the old filter first, and the new filter, to remove it from the box and just put it back in that box, just so the oil doesn't go everywhere. And I'm using a man oil filter, and what I'm doing here, there are 3 rubber gaskets which you have to remove off the stem from the oil filter. There's a small one, medium, sort of halfway, and then there's a large one where the threads is, so you need to remove them. So I've got you can use a flathead screwdriver and to remove those if you don't have the pick tool. Just make sure you remove those, you grab your new ones, dab it with a little bit of oil, but there's a little bit of oil, the new fresh oil might either work. Slide them over the stem, make sure they go in the right places. So you can see there's a nice little gap there, so that's where the biggest oil sort of rubber gasket would go. Pop it nice around, spin the cap all the way around, make sure it's in there. Take the second one, the middle one out, put it back on. Again, you can see the gap for it, so you can slide it on. Again, just make sure it's got a little bit of oil, so it's nice and lubricated. And the final one, it goes right on the tip. And again, it's all in good shape. So now we're ready to put the oil filter in place. So oil filter doesn't really matter which way. Just make sure you give it a good push so it's in place, and you'll know it's in place, but it'll be quite a little bit firm. And just put it into the oil filter. And here we can see that the pump has discharged, and this is a 5-litre bottle, so for this car, from the manufacturer spec, it says 6.5 litre, and here we go, I did spill a little bit, so that's why you've got the plastic bag. You've got no problems. So what I'm doing here, I know that it should be able to pull a bit more out, so I just wiggled that suction hose out, and then we were able to pull a bit more oil out of the engine. The extra oil I went out into an old milk bottle. Now, just to pull a bit more oil out again, wiggle the suction tube a bit more, just get more oil out of the engine. Once all the oil is out of the engine, turn the pump off, remove the terminals in reverse order, so black first then red. If there are any caps to the terminals, just make sure you put them back on. Right, so this here, I'm cleaning up the dipstick and putting it back in place. Next is to tighten the oil filter in position. The torque spec for this one is 25 Newton meters. So I grabbed the oil filter housing cap, popped it on there, put the tool on top of it, connected it in place, and tightened it up until 25 Newton meters, until the torque wrench is clicked. And now to top up the engine with fresh oil. So just open it up and make sure you're not gonna put any of that seal in the bottle. Open up the oil filler cap, get a funnel, pop it on there. Make sure that funnel has got a wide neck or quite a nice opening, and start topping up with the appropriate oil, and make sure the oil is actually compatible with your engine. So you can find these online or whichever oil manufacturer you want to use. And top up the engine oil and do it carefully so you don't spill engine oil everywhere. After you've topped up the engine oil, went to the dipstick to check the oil level, just to get an idea if we've hit the minimum at least, before we turn on the engine, let that engine run for a bit, and then let it sit down for a little bit so the engine oil collects in the reservoir, so we can check it and make sure we're getting correct readings. There you go, we can look that, yeah, it's at least above the minimum. That's it. So after you've topped up the engine oil to the maximum, put the engine cover back on and job done.